Hey, cleaning lady! You can't just help yourself to the pool after you finish the rooms. This isn't some public housing project. Chad Brookfield's voice boomed across the luxury resort pool, dripping with contempt. He stood over Dr. Zara Washington's lounge chair, pointing like she was trash to be removed. Other guests turned to stare. Some pulled out phones. Chad smirked at his audience. "I'm talking to you." He snapped his fingers inches from Zara's face. "Pack up your little setup and get back to work. Real guests are trying to relax here." Zara didn't flinch. She slowly closed her book, a classified intelligence briefing disguised as a novel. Her government phone buzzed beside $200 sunscreen. Zara slowly closed her book, a classified intelligence briefing disguised as a novel. Her government-issued phone buzzed face down beside $200 sunscreen. A first-class boarding pass peeked from her designer bag. She looked up with calm, dark eyes that had stared down international terrorists. Have you ever been judged so harshly that someone tried to have you arrested? When you actually outranked everyone in the room? 2:31 p.m. The countdown begins. 10 minutes. That's how long it took for one man's assumptions to trigger a chain reaction that would expose an entire system. Chad pulled out his iPhone, switching to video mode. "You know what? I'm documenting this. Security here is a joke if they're letting staff use guest facilities." He held the phone high, making sure to capture Zara's face. "This is Chad Brookfield, presidential suite guest. I'm at the Hamilton Resort Pool, and housekeeping staff are apparently using our amenities now." 2:32 p.m. The live stream notification popped up on his Facebook. 47 people joined immediately. Comments started flowing. "Good for you, Chad. Stand your ground." "These people think they can go anywhere now." "Call management." Two other white guests drifted closer. Margaret Wheaton, a regular guest, whispered loudly enough for everyone to hear. "I saw her earlier by the elevators. Definitely a housekeeping uniform underneath that cover-up." Her husband Robert nodded. "Probably saw the nice pool and thought she'd sneak in for a swim." 2:33 p.m. Zara remained perfectly still, her breathing controlled. Years of field training had taught her to observe everything. Chad's Rolex, $45,000. Margaret's designer swimsuit, Hermes, probably $800. Robert's agitation, real but performed for the crowd. Her encrypted phone buzzed again. The preview showed, "Urgent. Asset extraction tomorrow 0600. She dismissed it without looking away from her book. 2:34 p.m. "Ma'am?" A black security guard approached hesitantly. His name tag read Devin Mills. 20-something, nervous energy, clearly uncomfortable with the situation. "I'm sorry to bother you, but I've received some concerns from other guests. Could I possibly see your room key?" Devin's voice was professional but strained. He'd been on the job for 3 months. This wasn't covered in training. Zara looked up for the first time, her dark eyes meeting him. "Of course, Devin. But first, may I ask why I'm the only guest being asked for identification?" She gestured subtly toward the pool. 12 other people lounged around them, all white. None had been approached. 2:35 p.m. Chad stepped closer, emboldened by the growing audience. "Because the rest of us actually belong here. We're not trying to steal amenities we can't afford." His live stream now had 127 viewers. Someone had shared it to the Luxury Travel Complaints Facebook group with the caption, "Resort lets staff use guest pools. Unacceptable." Margaret leaned toward another guest. "I bet she doesn't even have a room key. Probably grabbed towels from the laundry cart." 2:36 p.m. Zara reached into her designer bag, a $3,000 Bottega Veneta that cost more than Devin made in a month. As her wallet opened, Devin caught a glimpse of multiple ID cards layered behind clear plastic. One had an eagle seal. Another was bright blue with diplomatic printed across the top. "Here's my room key," Zara said calmly, handing over the black magnetic card. Devin scanned it with his handheld device, His face went pale. Presidential Suite 3001, he read quietly. Registered to Dr. Z. Washington, U.S. Government. He looked up, confused. Ma'am, this is our most expensive accommodation. 2:37 p.m. Chad snatched the scanner from Devon's hands. That's impossible. Let me see that. The screen clearly showed Suite 3001, $2,400 night. Reserved by State Department Protocol Office. Guest, Dr. Zara Washington. Clearance level, restricted. Chad's confident expression flickered for the first time. Anyone can fake government reservations, he said, but his voice lacked its earlier conviction. Identity theft is huge these days. 2:38 p.m. More guests had gathered. The crowd now included 8 adults and 3 children. Phones were everywhere, recording from multiple angles. Mrs. Patterson, an elderly white woman in a sun hat, held her tablet steady. Unlike the others, she wasn't commenting, just documenting. Zara noticed her immediately. Retired teacher, probably. Mid-70s. Intelligent eyes. Recording everything for a reason. 2:39 p.m. This is ridiculous, Margaret announced to the crowd. Even if she has a room, which I doubt, she's clearly not the type of clientele Hamilton Resort usually accommodates. A teenager with his parents live-streamed to TikTok. Yo, drama at the fancy resort. Old white people versus... Well, just watch. His stream pulled 89 viewers in 30 seconds. 2:40 p.m. Zara's phone buzzed again. This time, the caller ID showed D.I.R. Martinez, CIA. She declined the call without hesitation, but not before Devon glimpsed the screen. His eyes widened slightly, but he said nothing. Chad was still filming, but his commentary had shifted. I mean, even if the reservation is legitimate, there are questions about how these government programs work. Taxpayer money shouldn't fund luxury vacations. The comments on his stream were getting more aggressive. Government waste at its finest. Bet she's on welfare too. Someone call the FBI. 2:41 p.m. 8 minutes left until Chad would discover exactly who he was live streaming. Zara closed her book and stood gracefully. At 5'7", she wasn't imposing physically, but something in her posture made the crowd step back slightly. Mr. Brookfield, she said, reading his name from the live stream caption. You've been recording me without consent for 10 minutes. You've made several assumptions about my employment, my finances, and my right to be here. Her voice remained calm, but each word was precisely chosen. Before we continue, I should mention that harassment of federal employees is covered under Title 18, Section 111 of the U.S. Code. Chad lowered his phone slightly. Federal employees? Devon, Zara said, turning to the security guard. Could you please call your manager? I believe this situation requires someone with more authority. 2:42 p.m. Management arrives. Bryce Hamilton strode across the pool deck in his tailored navy suit, sweat already beading on his forehead. As the resort's general manager, he'd built his reputation on keeping wealthy guests happy. Complaints meant bad reviews. Bad reviews meant corporate phone calls. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Bryce Hamilton, general manager. His practiced smile faltered as he saw the crowd, the phones, the live streams. I understand there's been some confusion. Chad immediately stepped forward, still filming. Finally, someone in charge. This woman has been using guest facilities without permission. When we asked her to leave, she got aggressive and started making legal threats. His live stream had grown to 289 viewers. Someone had cross-posted to Twitter with hashtag Pool Patrol, and the retweets were climbing. 2:43 p.m. I see. Bryce's eyes quickly assessed the situation. Expensive guest complaining versus... He struggled to categorize Zara. Her swimwear looked designer, but appearances could be deceiving. The path of least resistance was obvious. Ma'am, I'm sure this is just a misunderstanding, Bryce said to Zara, his tone professionally condescending. Perhaps we could discuss this privately in my office? Discuss what, exactly? Zara remained seated, perfectly composed. Well, proper resort protocols, guest area usage guidelines, that sort of thing. Margaret stepped closer to Bryce, lowering her voice just enough to seem conspiratorial while ensuring her words carried. We've been coming here for 6 years. This has never happened before. Standards seem to be slipping. Robert nodded gravely. We pay premium rates for a certain level of exclusivity. 2:44 p.m. Devon shifted uncomfortably, still holding Zara's room key. He'd worked security at 3 other resorts. This felt wrong, but managers made the rules. Sir, Devon said hesitantly to Bryce, her reservation shows she's staying in Presidential Suite 3001. That's our most expensive room. Bryce's jaw tightened. Devon was supposed to follow his lead, not complicate things. Reservations can be manipulated, Bryce said carefully. Identity theft is increasingly sophisticated these days. Chad's eyes lit up. Exactly. Anyone can fake a government booking online. 2:45 p.m. Zara's phone buzzed again. The screen lit up with another call from Dir Martinez, CIA. She glanced at it, then at the growing crowd of onlookers. Bryce noticed the government contact. His stomach tightened slightly, but Chad's live stream audience was approaching 400 people. Social media moved fast. He needed this resolved before it exploded further. Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to come with me, Bryce said firmly. We need to verify your situation. My situation? Zara's eyebrow raised slightly. Your right to be here, your employment status, whether these government contacts are legitimate. The teenager with the TikTok stream was now pulling 156 viewers. This is getting spicy! Manager versus mystery woman, place your bets in the comments. 2:46 p.m. Mrs. Patterson continued recording silently from her lounge chair, occasionally zooming in on different faces. Her tablet captured everything with remarkable clarity. More guests drifted over. The pool area was becoming an impromptu amphitheater. Children splashed in the far end, oblivious to the drama unfolding just 30 feet away. A family from New York whispered among themselves. The father pulled out his phone to record. Honey, get the kids, this might get ugly. But they didn't leave. Nobody left. The spectacle was too compelling. Chad sensed momentum shifting in his favor. Bryce was clearly on his side. Time to escalate for his audience. 2:47 p.m. She also mentioned something about federal employees and legal codes, Chad announced to his live stream. Like she's trying to intimidate us with fake government connections. Comments exploded. Classic scammer move. Government employees don't stay at places like this. She's probably got fake IDs too. Call the FBI if she's impersonating federal agents. One comment made Chad smile. My cousin's a cop. Want me to call him? Actually, Chad said to the camera, that's not a bad idea. If she's impersonating a federal employee, that's a serious crime. Bryce nodded approvingly. We have zero tolerance for fraud at Hamilton Resort. 2:48 p.m. That won't be necessary, came a new voice. Everyone turned to see 2 actual police officers approaching across the pool deck. Officer Martinez, a Latina woman in her 30s, and Officer Chen, an Asian man who looked barely 25. Someone called in a disturbance? Martinez asked, surveying the scene. Chad immediately stepped forward. Officers, thank God. This woman is trespassing and threatening guests with legal action. We suspect she's using fake government credentials. The accusation hung in the air like a challenge. Officer Martinez looked at the crowd, the phones, the obvious tension. She'd been a cop for 8 years. Situations like this rarely had simple explanations. 2:49 p.m. Ma'am, she said to Zara, could you stand up, please? Zara complied slowly, her movements deliberate and non-threatening. Years of training kicked in automatically. Hands visible, posture open, eye contact respectful but not submissive. Could I see some identification? Devon stepped forward again. Officer, she has a valid room key for the presidential suite. I verified it myself on our system. Bryce shot him a warning look. Devon, please let the officers handle this. The presidential suite costs $2,400 a night, Devon continued quietly, reserved under a government account. Officer Martinez's expression shifted slightly. Government reservations meant paperwork. Paperwork meant complications. 2:50 p.m. Zara reached slowly into her bag, her movements careful and deliberate. She withdrew a standard wallet, but as she opened it, multiple ID cards became visible through clear plastic sleeves. The first card she handed over was a driver's license, standard California issue. Dr. Zara Washington, Officer Martinez read aloud. Age 38, Stanford address. Chad leaned in, trying to see more. What about the other cards? I saw at least 3 different ones. Sir, please step back, Officer Chen said firmly. Chad's aggressive energy was escalating the situation. Margaret crossed her arms. If she's really a doctor, what's she doing at a resort pool on a Tuesday afternoon? Shouldn't she be working? 2:51 p.m. Martinez examined the license carefully. Valid, no obvious signs of tampering. But government reservations, expensive suites, crowds of angry guests, something didn't add up. Ma'am, do you have any other identification? Employment ID, perhaps? This was the moment Zara had been hoping to avoid. Her vacation, her first real time off in 18 months, was about to end. Behind them, sirens wailed in the distance, not approaching, just the ambient sound of city life. But Chad's live stream viewers heard it differently. More cops coming. This is getting serious. Someone's getting arrested for sure. 2:52 p.m. The viewer count hit 523. Someone had shared the stream to a Karen Encounters Facebook group with 47,000 members. Bryce checked his watch nervously. The longer this dragged on, the worse it looked for the resort. But he'd committed to a side now. Backing down would make him look weak. Officers, our other guests have the right to enjoy their amenities without disruption, he said. If there's any question about this individual's status, perhaps it's better to err on the side of caution. He let the implication hang, but his meaning was clear. Margaret nodded approvingly. We're not trying to be difficult. We just want clarity about who belongs here. 2:53 p.m. Zara looked around the circle of faces. Chad with his phone, desperate for content. Bryce protecting his reputation. Margaret and Robert guarding their privilege. The police officers doing their job. Devon caught in the middle, struggling with his conscience. And Mrs. Patterson, still recording everything silently from her strategic position. 5 minutes left, Zara said quietly, almost to herself. 5 minutes until what? Officer Martinez asked, her cop instincts tingling. Zara smiled slightly, the first real emotion she'd shown since this began. Until someone calls my office wondering why I'm not answering my phone. 2:54 p.m. Her government phone had been buzzing constantly now. The caller ID rotated between DIR Martinez, CIA, Deputy Chen, Operations, and Emergency Contact Langley. Chad noticed the repeated calls. She's probably got accomplices calling to back up her story. Or maybe it's just her phone set to fake those caller IDs. But Officer Martinez had been watching the phone too. CIA, Operations, Langley. Those weren't names you faked lightly. And if they were real, the implications were starting to dawn on her. 2:55 p.m. The moment of truth. Officer Martinez stared at Zara's phone as it buzzed again. Deputy Chen, Operations, flashed across the screen for the third time in 2 minutes. Ma'am, I need to ask you directly. Are you claiming to be a federal employee? The question hung in the air like a loaded weapon. Chad's live stream audience had swelled to 847 viewers. Comments flooded the screen faster than anyone could read them. Zara closed her book and stood slowly. For the first time since this began, she looked directly at Chad's camera. Mr. Brookfield, Before I answer that question, I need you to understand something very important. 2:56 p.m. She reached into her bag and withdrew her phone, turning it so everyone could see the screen. The caller ID showed Dir Martinez, CIA, with a photo of a stern-looking Latina woman in a business suit. This is Director Elena Martinez. She's been calling because I missed my 2:30 p.m. check-in. In my line of work, missed check-ins trigger protocols. Chad lowered his phone slightly. Something in Zara's tone had shifted. The calm was still there, but underneath it was steel. Officer Martinez felt her stomach drop. Real CIA calls didn't come to fake agents. Ma'am, what exactly is your line of work? 2:57 p.m. Zara looked around the circle of faces. Chad was still filming, but his confident smirk was gone. Bryce is sweating despite the air conditioning. Margaret and Robert are suddenly very quiet. Devin watched with growing understanding. Officer Martinez, I'm going to show you my federal identification. But first, I need everyone to understand that what you're about to see is classified information. Sharing it publicly could constitute a federal crime under the Espionage Act. She looked directly at Chad's camera. That includes live streaming it to Facebook. The comment section exploded. Holy shit, is she serious? This is getting real. Someone screen recorded this. 2:58 p.m. Zara reached into her wallet and withdrew a card that looked nothing like a standard government ID. Navy blue with gold lettering, it had multiple security features visible even from a distance. Holograms shifted in the light. A chip glinted from one corner. Officer Martinez took the card with trembling hands. Central Intelligence Agency, she read quietly. Dr. Zara Washington, Senior Intelligence Analyst, Security Clearance, TS-SCI with Polygraph Current. The words hit the crowd like a physical blow. Chad's phone slipped in his sweaty grip. That's not possible. TS-SCI means Top Secret Sensitive Compartmented Information, Zara explained calmly. It's the highest security clearance available to civilian personnel. The polygraph requirement means I'm tested every 5 years to maintain access to the most sensitive intelligence. 2:59 p.m. Bryce's face had gone completely white. CIA? But you're at a resort pool on a Tuesday afternoon. I'm on administrative leave, Zara said simply. My last assignment lasted 18 months. I was ordered to take time off. Officer Chen stepped closer to examine the ID. His police academy training had covered federal credentials, but he'd never seen one this high level in person. Ma'am, what kind of assignment lasts 18 months? Zara's expression didn't change, but something flickered behind her eyes. The kind that involves infiltrating international trafficking networks that move through luxury resort chains. The silence was deafening. 3:00 p.m. Chad's live stream viewer count had hit 1,203. Someone had shared it to Reddit's r// public freakout, and the upvotes were climbing rapidly. But Chad wasn't celebrating anymore. His hands shook as he processed what Zara had just said. Trafficking networks? Through resort chains? Human trafficking specifically, Zara said, her voice clinical. Young women from Southeast Asia brought to the U.S. under false pretenses, forced into domestic servitude for wealthy families. Resort chains provide perfect money laundering opportunities. Margaret grabbed Robert's arm. What does that have to do with us? Nothing, Mrs. Wheaton. Unless you've noticed anything unusual during your 6 years of regular visits here. 3:01 p.m. The implication hit like a sledgehammer. Zara had been investigating the resort. She knew Margaret's name without being introduced. She'd been watching, analyzing, gathering intelligence. Devin spoke up quietly. The girls in housekeeping, the ones who don't speak English, who never seems to leave the property. Zara's eyes met his. You've been paying attention. I always wondered why they looked so scared. Why did they never talk to anyone? Officer Martinez was still staring at the CIA credentials. Ma'am, Are you saying this resort is involved in human trafficking? I'm saying my investigation is ongoing, or was until today. 3:02 p.m. Bryce found his voice, though it cracked slightly. This is impossible. Hamilton Resort Group operates under strict ethical guidelines. We're audited regularly. By whom? Zara asked. Corporate compliance, state tourism boards, federal agencies. Which federal agencies specifically? Bryce opened his mouth, then closed it. He actually didn't know. Zara reached into her bag again and withdrew a tablet. Her fingers moved quickly across the screen, pulling up encrypted files. Hamilton Resort Group, annual revenue $847 million. Owned by Meridian Holdings, which is owned by Pacific Ventures, which is owned by a shell company registered in the Cayman Islands. 3:03 p.m. The numbers rolled off her tongue like recited poetry. 18 months ago, we identified unusual cash flows through Hamilton Properties. Large payments for consulting services to companies that don't exist. Room reservations paid for in cash by individuals with no credit history. She turned the tablet screen toward Officer Martinez. This location specifically processed $2.3 million in suspicious transactions last year. Chad's phone was still recording, but he'd stopped commentating. The live stream audience was captivated by the unfolding revelation. Comments had shifted from mockery to shock. This is insane. Is this real life? I can't believe this is happening. 3:04 p.m. The girls Devon mentioned, Zara continued, arrived on tourist visas that expired 18 months ago. They're housed in the staff quarters behind the kitchen. 12 women in a space designed for 4. They work 16-hour days with no pay and are told their families will be killed if they try to leave. Officer Martinez was reaching for her radio. This was way beyond a pool disturbance. Ma'am, if this is an active federal investigation, it was. Until Mr. Brookfield here live-streamed my face to the internet, potentially compromising months of work and putting those women at risk. The accusation hung in the air like poison. 3:05 p.m. Chad finally found his voice. I didn't know. You looked like... I thought you were... You thought I was what, Mr. Brookfield? The question was simple, but it carried the weight of everything that had led to this moment. I thought... Chad's voice trailed off as he realized there was no good way to finish that sentence. You thought I didn't belong here because I'm black. That's not... I mean, it's exactly what you mean. And because of that assumption, you've potentially endangered a federal investigation and the lives of 12 women. 3:06 p.m. Zara's phone buzzed again. This time she answered. Director Martinez, this is Agent Washington. Yes, ma'am. I'm aware I missed check-in. No, ma'am, there's been a complication. She looked around the crowd as she spoke. I'm currently at the Hamilton Resort with local police. My cover may be compromised. Yes, ma'am, I'll explain later. She hung up and looked at Officer Martinez. Federal agents will be here within 30 minutes to secure the scene. 3:07 p.m. The reality of the situation was finally sinking in for everyone. This wasn't a pool disturbance anymore. This was a federal crime scene. Mrs. Patterson, who had been quietly recording everything, finally spoke up. I knew something was wrong here. The girls looked terrified. I tried to report it, but nobody would listen to an old woman. Zara nodded to her respectfully. Thank you for documenting this, Mrs. Patterson. Your footage will be crucial evidence. Officer Chen was already on his radio, calling for backup and federal liaison contact. Chad stared at his phone, watching his live stream comments scroll by. What had started as entertainment had become something else entirely. Chad, you messed up bad. This woman is a hero. You just destroyed a human trafficking investigation. 3:08 p.m. Bryce was on his phone with corporate headquarters, his voice frantic. I don't care what time it is in New York, get me legal counsel now. Margaret and Robert sat down heavily on nearby chairs. 6 years of coming to this resort. 6 years of turning a blind eye to things that hadn't seemed quite right. Devon approached Zara carefully. "Agent Washington, what happens to the girls now?" "They'll be safe," Zara said simply. "They'll be placed in protective custody, given medical care, and offered a path to legal residency if they choose to testify." She looked around the crowd one more time. This is why assumptions are dangerous. Because when you see someone and immediately decide they don't belong, you might be looking at the person who's risking their life to save others. 3:09 p.m. In the distance, sirens were getting louder. Real ones this time, approaching fast. Zara began packing her things methodically. Her relaxing vacation was over, but 18 months of work was about to pay off. Chad was still filming, but now he was narrating differently. I think I just made a huge mistake. This woman is actually CIA, and I may have just interfered with a human trafficking investigation." The live stream has 1,847 viewers now. The story was spreading across social media platforms like wildfire, but the narrative had completely changed. 3:10 p.m. Federal agents arrive. 3 black SUVs screamed into the resort's circular driveway. Agent Sofia Reyes stepped out first, her FBI windbreaker catching the afternoon sun. Behind her, Agent Marcus Torres from Homeland Security and Agent Jennifer Kim from the Department of Justice formed a formidable line. Zara watched them approach with professional satisfaction. 18 months of work was about to culminate in exactly the way she'd planned. "Agent Washington," Reyes called as she approached the pool area. "We received your emergency signal. Status report." "Cover compromised due to civilian interference," Zara replied crisply. "Recommend immediate transition to arrest phase." Chad's live stream exploded with comments as viewers watched federal agents take control of the scene. "This is actually happening. FBI is here. Chad, you are so screwed." 3:11 p.m. Agent Torres immediately began coordinating with Officer Martinez. "We need this entire pool area secured. No one leaves without federal clearance." Bryce stepped forward, his corporate training kicking in despite his obvious panic. "Agents, I'm Bryce Hamilton, General Manager. There must be some misunderstanding. Hamilton Resort Group maintains the highest ethical standards." "Mr. Hamilton," Agent Kim interrupted, pulling out a tablet. "We have warrants for the immediate seizure of all financial records, computer systems, and personnel files. You're going to cooperate fully, or you're going to be arrested for obstruction of justice." Her tone left no room for negotiation. 3:12 p.m. Zara opened her own tablet and began displaying the evidence she'd been gathering for 18 months. The data painted a devastating picture of systematic exploitation. "Hamilton Resort Group financial analysis," she began, her voice carrying the authority of someone who'd spent months building an ironclad case. "Total annual revenue, $847 million across 47 properties. Federal contracts at risk, $23 million annually in State Department diplomatic accommodations, Defense Department R&R facilities, and Justice Department witness protection safe houses." Bryce's face went ashen. He'd had no idea how much government business they handled. Potential RICO violations, conspiracy, money laundering, human trafficking. Under federal sentencing guidelines, that's 15 to 20 years minimum for executives with knowledge of operations. 3:13 p.m. Margaret and Robert Wheaton sat in stunned silence, processing the implications. 6 years of regular visits, 6 years of suspicious observations they'd dismissed. Chad was still recording, but his commentary had become a stream of apologies and self-recrimination. "I can't believe. I thought I was protecting the resort from... but she was protecting actual victims." His viewer count had climbed to 2,541. The video was being shared across every major platform. Agent Reyes approached Devon, who was still holding Zara's original room key. "Sir, you mentioned observing suspicious activity with housekeeping staff?" "Yes, ma'am." The girls from the East Wing. They always looked scared. Never spoke to guests. I worked crazy hours. We'll need a full statement. Your observations could be crucial for prosecution. 3:14 p.m. Zara turned to Bryce, her expression businesslike but implacable. Mr. Hamilton, you have approximately 5 minutes to make a decision that will determine whether you spend the next 2 decades in federal prison. What kind of decision? Full cooperation. Complete disclosure of all financial records, personnel files, and communication with parent companies. Immediate assistance in securing the safety of trafficking victims. She gestured toward Agent Kim. Or you can lawyer up and fight this, in which case Agent Kim will freeze all Hamilton Resort Group assets under the RICO statute while we conduct a full forensic investigation. 3:15 p.m. The numbers were stark and undeniable. Agent Kim read from her tablet. Suspicious transaction analysis. $2.3 million in cash payments to shell companies. 27 room reservations paid for by individuals with no verifiable employment history. 38 wire transfers to accounts in countries with no extradition treaties. Personnel violations. 12 individuals working without valid documentation. 0 payroll records for East Wing housekeeping staff. 16-hour work shifts with no overtime compensation. Bryce's corporate training had prepared him for bad publicity, angry guests, even minor legal issues. It hadn't prepared him for federal racketeering charges. What would cooperation look like? 3:16 p.m. Zara exchanged glances with Agent Reyes. This was the moment they'd been working toward. Immediate access to all Meridian Holdings communications, Zara said. Complete financial records for the last 3 years, staff rosters with immigration status verification, and most importantly, the location of senior management who authorized these operations. Mr. Hamilton, Agent Torres added, we know your middle management. We're after the decision-makers who created this system. Help us get them, and your cooperation will be noted in your sentencing. The offer hung in the air like a lifeline. Chad's live stream chat was moving too fast to follow. Take the deal, Bryce. You're going to be someone's prison wife. This is better than Netflix. 3:17 p.m. Mrs. Patterson approached Agent Reyes with her tablet. Agent, I've been recording this entire incident. I also have 18 months of photos and videos of suspicious activities I've observed during my stays here. Ma'am, that's extremely helpful. We'll need copies of everything. I suspected something was wrong. The girls looked so frightened. I tried to report it to management, but they always had explanations. Zara looked at the elderly woman with newfound respect. Mrs. Patterson, your documentation may be the key to prosecuting the entire network. 3:18 p.m. Officer Martinez was coordinating with federal agents to secure the staff quarters. Devon volunteered to guide them to the East Wing where the trafficking victims were housed. Agent Washington, Devon said quietly. What happens to me? I saw things, but I didn't report them properly. You're not law enforcement, Devon. You had suspicions, but no authority to investigate. Your willingness to testify will help convict the people responsible. Chad overheard and looked up from his phone. What about me? I interfered with your investigation. Zara studied him for a moment. Mr. Brookfield, you live-streamed a federal agent without consent and potentially compromised an operation that took 18 months to develop. But you didn't know that when you started. 3:19 p.m. Agent Kim was already on the phone with federal prosecutors. We have enough for immediate arrests on trafficking charges. RICO indictments can follow within 30 days if we get full cooperation. She looked at Bryce. Mr. Hamilton, you have 2 minutes to decide. Cooperation agreement or federal custody? Bryce was sweating profusely despite the air conditioning. His hands shook as he pulled out his phone. I need to call corporate legal counsel. You can call them from Federal Holding, Agent Torres said flatly. Or you can make this easier for everyone. 3:20 p.m. The weight of 18 months of investigation was finally bearing fruit. Zara felt the satisfaction of a job well done, mixed with frustration at how close they'd come to losing everything. "The trafficking victim's safety is our priority," she announced to the crowd. "Federal marshals are en route to provide protective custody. These women will receive medical care, legal representation, and counseling services." Margaret spoke up hesitantly. "Agent Washington, we stayed here for years. We saw things that didn't seem right, but we ignored them. Are we in trouble?" "Mrs. Wheaton, willful blindness isn't a crime, but it is a choice. You can choose differently now by cooperating with our investigation." 3:21 p.m. Bryce finally cracked under the pressure. Okay, I'll cooperate, but I need immunity. I was following orders from Meridian Holdings. They threatened to fire anyone who asked questions about the housekeeping arrangements." Agent Kim smiled grimly. "Now we're getting somewhere. Tell us about Meridian Holdings' involvement." "Monthly video conferences with executives in the Cayman Islands. Instructions to keep the East Wing staff isolated. Cash payments that didn't go through normal payroll systems." The confession was being recorded on multiple devices: federal equipment, Chad's live stream, and Mrs. Patterson's tablet. 3:22 p.m. Chad's viewer count had reached 3,847. The story was trending on Twitter under #PoolJustice and #CIA Agent. Major news outlets were already reaching out for interviews. But Chad wasn't thinking about fame anymore. He was thinking about the 12 women who'd been suffering while he worried about pool privileges. "Agent Washington," he said quietly, "I know I messed up badly, but I want to help however I can. This video, if it helps your case, you can use it." Zara nodded. "The documentation of this incident may indeed be valuable evidence, Mr. Brookfield. Your live stream captured several individuals making incriminating statements." At 3:23 p.m. As federal agents spread throughout the resort, Zara reflected on the unexpected turn her vacation had taken. Sometimes the best operations were the ones that ended in chaos, because chaos revealed truth. The resort that had seemed like paradise was about to be exposed as a hub of human misery. But 12 women were about to be free. That made everything worth it. 6 months later, the Hamilton Resort pool looked exactly the same, but everything had changed. New management, new policies, new staff who spoke freely and smiled genuinely. Chad Brookfield sat at the same poolside table where his live stream had gone viral, but he wasn't a guest anymore. He was there for his monthly community service, teaching bias awareness workshops to hospitality workers. 6 months ago, I made assumptions about a woman based solely on her race, he told the group of new employees. Those assumptions nearly destroyed a federal investigation and endangered the lives of trafficking victims. His voice carried genuine remorse. The viral video had cost him his job, his marriage, and most of his friends. But it had also taught him something about the weight of prejudice. The immediate aftermath. Within 48 hours of Zara's revelation, the transformation had begun. Federal agents had rescued 12 women from the staff quarters. Medical examinations revealed malnutrition, untreated injuries, and signs of prolonged psychological trauma. Maria Santos, 23, from the Philippines, was the first to speak to investigators. Through a translator, she described 18 months of 16-hour workdays, no pay, threats against her family, and constant fear. "I thought I was coming to America for a good job," she said. "They took my passport the first day and told me I owed them $50,000 for transportation and housing." By the end of the week, all 12 women had been placed in protective custody with specialized counseling services. 3 chose to return home immediately. 9 decided to stay and testify, with immigration attorneys helping them pursue legal residency status. Corporate consequences. Hamilton Resort Group's stock price plummeted 23% within a week. Federal investigators froze $15 million in assets pending full financial audits. Bryce Hamilton was fired immediately, but avoided prison time in exchange for his testimony against Meridian Holdings executives. He spent 18 months in federal minimum security detention and now works as a compliance consultant, helping other hospitality companies identify trafficking red flags. The Cayman Islands executives weren't so fortunate. Extradition proceedings brought 5 senior managers to face federal RICO charges. 3 received sentences between 12 and 18 years. Systemic changes. The new Hamilton Resort Group, under federal oversight, implemented comprehensive reforms. The Washington Protocol, named after Zara's investigation, required monthly third-party audits of all staff working conditions. Anonymous reporting systems allowed employees to flag concerns without retaliation. Financial transparency standards. All cash transactions over $500 required federal reporting. Shell company payments were prohibited entirely. Staff protection measures. Mandatory English language classes for all employees. Direct deposit payroll systems only. Immigration status. Verification through federal agencies, not private contractors. The reforms cost $2.8 million to implement, but saved the company from complete federal takeover. More importantly, they became an industry standard adopted by 847 other resort properties within 6 months. Individual transformations. Devin Mills used his testimony experience to pursue a criminal justice degree. The resort promoted him to head of security and sent him to federal training programs on human trafficking identification. He now trains security personnel at hospitality conferences nationwide. Mrs. Patterson became an advocate for bystander intervention training. Her 18 months of documentation had provided crucial evidence for prosecution. At 74, she started a nonprofit teaching seniors how to recognize and report suspicious activities in their communities. Margaret and Robert Wheaton sold their timeshare, but continued visiting under the new management. They donated $100,000 to anti-trafficking organizations and volunteer monthly at immigrant services centers. "We ignored signs for 6 years," Margaret admitted during a victim impact statement. "We chose comfort over consciousness. That ends now." Professional recognition. Zara received the CIA's Intelligence Star for exceptional service under dangerous conditions. Her 18-month investigation resulted in 47 arrests across an international trafficking network spanning 12 countries. The case study became required reading at the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center. Her method of long-term undercover work in luxury environments was adopted by multiple agencies. But the recognition that meant most to her came from Maria Santos, who sent a handwritten note after 6 months of freedom. "You saved my life by doing your job. Thank you for seeing us when others looked away." Measurable impact. Federal data showed the results of the Hamilton investigation rippling across the hospitality industry. Trafficking-related arrests in resort properties, up 340% as employees learned to recognize signs. Anonymous tip reports, increased 67% industry-wide after the Washington Protocol implementation. Victim identification, improved by 23% as staff received proper training. Corporate compliance costs averaged $180,000 per property, but prevented an estimated $2.3 billion in trafficking revenue. The intellectual victory. No lawsuits, no violence, no destruction. Just intelligence, persistence, and the power of exposure creating lasting change. Zara had proven that the most effective weapon against systemic injustice was systematic evidence. The pool that had been a site of assumptions and humiliation became a symbol of transformation. Where trafficking victims once suffered in hidden quarters, free workers now earned fair wages with full legal protections. Where racial profiling had nearly destroyed an investigation, comprehensive bias training now prevented discrimination. The quiet power of one woman's expertise had transformed an entire industry's approach to human dignity. 1 year later. The return. Dr. Zara Washington walked across the same pool deck where her vacation had been interrupted 12 months earlier. This time, she was here for a different reason. The Hamilton Resort had invited her to speak at the hospitality industry's first annual Human Dignity Conference. 200 hotel managers, security personnel, and government officials had gathered to learn from her case. As she passed the pool, she noticed a young Filipino woman cleaning nearby tables. But this woman looked different from the trafficking victims they'd rescued. She moved freely, chatted with co-workers in perfect English, and wore a name tag that read, Assistant Manager Maria Santos, the same Maria who'd been rescued 18 months ago. The ripple effect continues. Zara's story had traveled far beyond one resort pool. The viral video, Chad's live stream, and Mrs. Patterson's documentation had been viewed 14.7 million times across all platforms. It sparked conversations in corporate boardrooms, university classrooms, and family dinner tables. The hashed pool justice movement generated 2.3 million social media posts about unconscious bias and bystander responsibility. But more importantly, it led to concrete action. 47 states adopted mandatory bias training for hospitality workers. Federal contracts now require anti-trafficking certification for all vendors. The Zara Protocol became standard operating procedure for identifying potential victims. University business schools added her case study to required coursework, personal legacy in real-life stories. These Black stories, these real-life stories, these touching stories of transformation proved that individual courage could reshape entire systems. Maria Santos now managed the same housekeeping department where she'd once been enslaved. Her story inspired legislation protecting trafficking survivors who chose to rebuild their lives in America. Devin Mills had graduated with his criminal justice degree and joined the FBI's Human Trafficking Task Force. His first-hand experience identifying victims made him invaluable in training other law enforcement officers. Mrs. Patterson, at 75, had testified before Congress about the importance of senior citizen advocacy. Her documentation techniques were now taught in community colleges nationwide. Even Chad Brookfield had found redemption. His bias awareness workshops had reached over 10,000 hospitality workers. The man who'd once live-streamed assumptions now used his platform to educate others about the dangers of prejudice. The broader impact. But perhaps the most important change was invisible. The conversations that happened in hotel lobbies, resort pools, and vacation destinations where people now looked more carefully, questioned their assumptions, and spoke up when something seemed wrong. 12 women had been freed from that single resort. But the investigation they triggered had identified 89 additional victims across the trafficking network. The intellectual approach, evidence over emotion, strategy over anger, had saved lives that violence never could have reached. Your role in this story. Every day, someone faces discrimination based on assumptions. Every day, someone witnesses injustice and chooses silence over action. But change happens when we document, strategize, and respond with intelligence instead of just anger. Tell us in the comments, what's one time you witnessed bias and wish you'd spoken up? Your story might help someone else find their voice. Share this video to remind someone that expertise, dignity, and worth cannot be determined by someone else's assumptions. Subscribe to Black Voices Uncut for more real-life stories of quiet power creating loud change. These touching stories of resilience, intelligence, and transformation need to be heard. Hit that notification bell, because when we amplify Black stories, we change the narrative for everyone. These life stories remind us that heroes don't always wear capes. Sometimes they wear swimsuits by hotel pools, armed with nothing but truth, patience, and the power to prove that assumptions can be deadly, but courage can be transformative.